Hi everyone, my name is Anna Moyer. I am an assistant psychologist working in the Adult Learning Disability Service within the Health and Social Care Partnership Grampian. The aim of this presentation will be to increase knowledge about ABC charts, why we use them, how to fill them out, and the benefits of them. So let's talk about the window of tolerance. We all have our own window of tolerance and everyone is different. So, different factors, for example, trauma and pain, can affect people's window of tolerance. Positive behavioural support plans, care plans, and timetables are all aimed at increasing the quality of life for an individual. This can be done through environmental modifications and consistent approaches, and these are largely based on the window of tolerance model. So, the green zone in the centre is where people typically function at their best. And the PBS plan can develop proactive strategies that helps keep people within their green zone. Triggers can push people out of their green zone. These can be internal triggers, for example, pain, discomfort, emotions, hunger. And these can also be external triggers, so the environment, noise, change to routine. If someone is pushed slightly out of their green zone on their window of tolerance to triggers, then they may display slight behavioural changes, and this is known as the amber zone. ABC charts can help identify triggers that push someone out of their green zone and what this looks like. So, for example, behavioural changes such as pacing, increased speed of speech, being repetitive, and leaving the room. If someone is pushed far outside their green zone of window of tolerance, then they may display extreme behavioural changes, for example, shouting, screaming, hitting. This is known as the red zone. ABC charts can help identify any potential triggers and give a clear description of what people look like when they enter their red zone. An individual may go into their blue zone of their window of tolerance. This can be demonstrated by changes in behaviour such as shutting down, withdrawal, getting stuck in one posture, fatigue. ABC charts can help us identify what that person looks like and what to do when they're in their blue zone. So this is what a typical ABC chart will look like. Different organisations will have their own style, but this should be the key prompts that is in the form. So antecedent, where, when, who was there, doing what, and describe the environment. What was communicated and or requested, and how was this done? Behaviour, what did they say, what did they do, and how long did it last? Consequence, how did you respond, how did others respond, and how did the client respond to your approach? So what is an ABC chart? An ABC chart is a way of recording and collecting information to help understand why someone is displaying this behaviour. The ABC chart does this by breaking down the observation into three sections. So the antecedent is what happened directly before the behaviour occurred. The behaviour section is where specific actions or behaviour of interest are recorded. And the consequence section is what happened directly after the behaviour occurred. If we think of behaviour in this way, we can think about why people display the behaviour, and this helps us to develop more meaningful interventions rather than just trying to prevent the behaviour itself. The antecedent, what is this? The antecedent explores exactly what happens before the event. So certain things can trigger behaviour. So slow triggers such as noise, lighting and smell. There's fast triggers, so changes to routine, communication, different approaches used. There's also internal triggers, so things such as pain, illness, anxiety. And there's also external triggers, so new staff, unfamiliar routine, and inconsistency. When filling out an ABC chart, it is really helpful to think of the environmental aspects. Was it noisy? Was it busy? Were there bright lights? And were there strong smells? Were they the person in an unfamiliar location? This can help us build up and understand the bigger picture of what was happening at that time of event. So, what to think about when you're filling out the antecedent section? Where was the person? Where was their location? Were they in their room, the living room? Were they out in the garden? What were they doing? Write down exactly what they were doing. Were they in the kitchen prepping lunch? Were they doing arts and crafts? What was the time? Write down the time of the incident. This is really helpful to identify any kind of patterns and themes around specific times of the day. What was going on in the environment? Was it busy? Was it loud? Were people just finishing having their lunch? So here we have an example of a poor antecedent section on an ABC chart. It is missing some of the key information that we need to analyse an ABC chart. They have put the location as the kitchen, so it's helpful to be really specific. Whereabout in the kitchen were they? Were they at the sink doing the dishes? Were they at the table eating lunch? They've put the time down, which is really helpful to see if there's any patterns. We can look at other ABC charts and see if there's specific times of the day. And it helps us to understand what's going on around about that time. The who was there section has been left blank. It's really helpful for us to know who was there during the incident. So this includes other residents, family, friends, and staff. It's important to remember that this is not about allocating blame. It's particularly helpful when identifying staff members who have experienced high level of incidents in order for us to be able to support them on how to support the client. This information also allows us to see who is not experiencing high levels of incidents and allows us an opportunity to learn from them with their techniques and strategies. The environment section has been left blank, and this means we do not know if it was busy, if it was loud, if there was bright lights, if there were strong smells. We don't know what has been communicated or if there has been anything communicated to this person or requested of them. The section has been left blank. For example, were they asked to go and get the vegetables from the fridge and start prepping them, or were they asked to help the staff member empty the dishwasher? So unfortunately, this ABC chart lacks the key information we need to be able to build up a picture of what happened exactly before the incident. So this is an example of a good antecedent section of an ABC chart. We have a clear description of the location of where the incident started. It states, in the hallway beside the front door as you enter day service. The time section has been completed, so it was 9:05 a.m. So this was in the morning time. We have who was there at the time of the incident, so it lists Stacey and staff members Jenny and John. And it also highlights that there was other people from the service entering. So this is really helpful to know as it starts to build up the picture that it was likely to be quite busy and quite noisy. There's a clear description of what happened, so it states Stacey entered the day centre and was approached by staff Jenny. Stacey was asked to wait as staff Jenny was speaking with another staff member, John. So this is really helpful as it highlights that this was a transition from outside into the day centre for Stacey. It also described a verbal interaction between Stacey and staff and also highlighted that there was a demand placed on Stacey so that she was asked to wait. The environment section has been filled out and we can see that it was really noisy, it was crowded and there was other people entering the day service. So these might be triggers for Stacey, so noise, busy environment, and it's helpful to start to get a picture of what it would have been like for Stacey entering the day service. We also know what was communicated and requested to Stacey and how this was done, so we know that there was a verbal demand of asking her to wait. The behaviour section. What is this? So this part looks at what specific behaviours occurred during the incident and in the exact order that they happened. So for example, they started to pace back and forth, they then started to scream, then they punched a wall with a closed fist. During this section, we aim to be objective in defining the behaviour without placing any moral judgment. So for example, instead of saying John was disruptive in class, we could say John was screaming loudly when the teacher told the class to go into reading groups. It may be helpful to imagine that there was a camera recording the behaviour, and what exactly would you see, and you write that down. So it might be helpful to have some prompts to think about when you're filling out the behaviour section. So what did the person say? Give specific examples. If they swore or said repetitive phrases, include these in the ABC chart. What did the person do? Just write down exactly what you saw. How long did the behaviour last? It's helpful to keep an eye on time. Did it last 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 1 hour, 4 hours? How intense was the behaviour? What was the severity of the behaviour? So did it result in first aid being required or any hospitalisation? So this is an example of a poor behaviour section on an ABC chart. It's missing some of the key information that we need to be able to analyse the behaviour section. So what did they say? That section has been left blank. What did they do? It says, had a temper tantrum. So this is quite degrading language and it infantilises the client. It's also not objectively defining the behaviour, and we're not clear on what a temper tantrum is. How long was the incident? So ages. This is really difficult to analyse. Ages could be 1 hour, 2 hour, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. My perception of ages is going to be different to your perception of ages. So we need to be clear and specific with timings. So here we have a good example of the behaviour section on an ABC chart. We have a clear description of what Stacey said. So it says, Stacey screamed, I am not waiting. In the what did they do section, we have Stacey ran across the room and picked up a chair. Stacey threw the chair across the room in the direction of staff Jenny. This is a really clear description, and we can mentally visualise what happened, who was there, and who was involved. And we know the incident lasted 15 minutes, and therefore it was relatively short. The consequence section. What is this? So this section of an ABC chart records exactly what happens after the event. And this can aid our understanding into why the person is displaying the distress behaviours and what has caused this response from the client. So some helpful prompts to think about when filling out the consequence section can be, how did you respond? How did they respond? How did the client respond to your approach? And was there anybody else around the client that responded to the behaviour? So this is an example of a poor consequence section on an ABC chart. It is missing some of the key information that we need to analyse the consequence section. In the how did you respond section, we have told them off and sent them to their room. Now this is quite vague and we don't know what told them off consists of. What was exactly said? Was there a change to your tone or pitch of your voice? We can see that they've been sent to their room, and the language used in this incident form indicates that this was used as a punitive method rather than them being sent to their room for quiet space, to listen to music, or to decompress. So it's not ethical to use punitive methods, as this assumes that the person has the ability to learn consequences from past behaviour and apply this learning to new situations. It does not also provide them with an alternative way to communicate their need and to manage the emotions felt in their body. We need to remember here that all behaviour is a form of communication and we're trying to figure out what they're communicating. There's no information in the section asking how other people responded. This could mean two things, either that there was no response, which is still helpful to know, or that they haven't written down the response. In the section under how did the client respond to your approach, we can see that they have put sighed at staff and went to the room. Again, this was very vague. What about their facial or their body expressions? Did they walk or did they run to the room? What did they do when they went to their room? So here we have an example of a good consequence section on an ABC chart. There is clear information about how staff responded. So it states, Jenny ran over to Stacey and asked her to come and have a chat in the garden where it is quiet. In the next section, we can see that Stacey's peers nearby were upset and staff supported the peers to move from the hallway into the living room. So this is really clear and descriptive, and we can get a sense of the environment in that it may have been busy and noisy if her peers were upset. In addition, it highlights strategies that staff are using, so transitioning from a high stimulus environment to a low stimulus environment to help regulate arousal levels within the home. Lastly, we can see how Stacey responded to this approach. So Stacey sat with staff quietly in the garden. After 15 minutes, Stacey put on her headphones and listened to music. She got up and went through to the living room to sit with her peers. So this is really helpful when trying to get a picture of what happened and trying to understand Stacey's arousal cycle and the time it takes for her to come down from her red and amber zone back into her green zone. It's also really useful to know that Stacey's got her own grounding techniques, so listening to music, and this can be a strategy that you could maybe put in her care plan or her positive behaviour support plan. We can also start to think about the function of Stacey's behaviour and the consequences. So Stacey was able to transition into a new environment and spend one-to-one social connection time with staff. It may be that her timetable needs reviewed to allow for some low stimulus activities and some one-to-one social interactions. So, when we're filling out ABC charts, it might be helpful to think about what is going on for the client. So, if we remember, behaviour is a form of communication, and we want to find out what the client is trying to communicate to us. Think, so what might be happening for them at the moment? Is behaviour unusual for them? Have there been any changes? So, staff, placements? Are there big holidays coming up? So, birthdays, Christmas, Halloween? Have they been unwell? All these things can influence behaviour. We need to think about the bigger picture when we're trying to formulate and understand behaviour. So, what's the function of the behaviour? It's really important to remember that behaviour is a form of communication. We want to find out what the client is trying to communicate to us. These are the most common functions of behaviour. So there's an escape function. Are they escaping a sensory experience that's causing the person discomfort? For example, the experience of pain or an unexpected noise in their environment. Is there a social connection function? Do they have the opportunity for social connections with other people? Are they getting their psychological, social, and emotional needs met? Is there a sensory function to the behaviour? Are they increasing their own sensory experiences? Is there a tangible function to the behaviour? For example, to get access to something physical that they need or want. So, for example, food or drink. So, it's really important to be mindful of the language that we use when we're filling out ABC charts. So, we always use objective language and we write without a judgment. So try and stick to the facts about what happened rather than incorporating your own opinion into what happened. So, for example, instead of writing John was angry and aggressive, we could write John was tensing his jaw, he was pointing his finger, and he was swearing. Or instead of writing Stacey was anxious, we could write Stacey was pacing back and forth in the hallway. So, what's the outcome of filling out an ABC chart? Well, ABC charts can help us to identify any potential triggers. So that can be slow triggers, fast triggers, internal triggers, and external triggers. And they provide an environmental context for the behaviour. ABC charts can help identify the function of the behaviour. So is it a social connection function? Is it an escape function, sensory, or tangible? ABC charts can help pull out any themes, so specific times of the day. Do we see more incidents in the morning or do we see it more in the afternoon? It can help pull out specific days of the week. Do we see more on a Saturday? Do we see more on a Thursday? It can also pull out different locations that we see more incidents in. So, are we seeing more in the bedroom, in the shared living room space? ABC charts can help us to guide our interventions, and any strategies that we put in are introduced with the aim of stopping or reducing and encouraging alternatives to challenging behaviour. It's also important to recognise that challenged behaviour can occur for very, very complex reasons, and there will be individuals for whom those reasons remain unclear even after a functional assessment has been carried out. However, even plans based on a tentative theory can prove useful in the long term. Thank you so much for listening and going through the presentation. We've now come to the end of how to fill out ABC charts and a little bit into why we use them and what we do with them.